My name is Julie, and I've always considered myself to be a good person. Although I do feel that sometimes you need to be selfish in order to protect yourself. I know that must sound terrible, but I think once you hear my story, you'll understand why I say that. Years ago, I met my husband Kevin at a house party. It was love at first sight, and soon after we started dating. Not long after that, we were engaged and married. It was a whirlwind of love and romance, and months after we were married, I became pregnant. It was a rough pregnancy, but after 9 months, I gave birth to our daughter. We named her Diane, after my mother, and I thought that we would eventually have more children as well. But that was when things began to go downhill. I was feeding Diane, and Kevin had called and told me that he would be working late. But when he came home, he was drunk and had lipstick all over his face. Kevin, where have you been, and why do you stink of booze and cheap perfume?
Oh, lighten up. I was just having a bit of fun. It's not cheating if all I did was kiss them.
Before I could get really angry, Kevin passed out into a chair. The next morning, he came and apologized to me. It turned out that one of his colleagues was getting married and they had gone to a strip club to celebrate. I knew that I should have been furious, but once he started to apologize, I found it hard to stay mad.
I am so sorry, honey. I swear that it will never happen again. Please, I beg you to forgive me. On my mother's life, I swear that it won't happen again.
Again, I knew that I should have been more upset, but I wanted to believe him, and so I reluctantly chose to forgive him. It felt wrong at the time, but what else was I supposed to do? Months passed, and Kevin was on his best behavior. He came home on time after work and helped around the house more than he had ever done before. He was being so good, in fact, that when he asked if he could go on a fishing trip with his friends, that I had no problem with agreeing to let him go. However, the first night that he was gone, I felt my phone vibrate and noticed that it was Kevin calling me. Curious, I answered only to hear the oddest call. Hi, Kevin. Is everything okay? I could hear people talking in the background, but no one was near the phone itself. It was clear that it had been a butt dial. Knowing this, I began to chuckle, until I heard what was definitely the voices of several women. Which was odd since the trip was supposed to only be Kevin and his 3 male friends. Instead of hanging up, I began to listen, although I couldn't hear what they were saying. However, after a few minutes, the call was dropped, and when I called him back, I didn't get any answer. My calls just kept going to voicemail. Angrily, I waited for Kevin to call me back.
Honey, is everything okay? I just checked my phone and saw that you called over a dozen times.
No, Kevin, it's not okay. Where are you right now?
With my friends. Why?
Because you pocket dialed me and I heard woman. Kevin, what are you doing?
We just headed into town for dinner. You probably heard the other patrons.
It did seem like a logical explanation, but there was something about it that bothered me and made me skeptical about his response. Kevin, I really hope that you're telling the truth. And with that, I hung up the phone and counted down the minutes until he finally came home. When he came in through the door, I grabbed his suitcase from him and threw it to the ground and started looking through it. As I went through the items, I couldn't help but notice that there was no fishing gear packed into his suitcase, or fishing tackle, or really anything that someone would need to take on a fishing trip. There was, however, a box of condoms that with half of the wrappers empty having been used. And what is this, Kevin?
Oh, fine. Yes. You know what? I'm done pretending anyways. You've caught me red-handed.
Have you been cheating on me?
Yes, you stupid cow, I have been. You and Diane are weighing me down, suffocating me. I'm done with you two. At least now I won't have to pretend anymore.
I was speechless, but Kevin didn't even care as he gathered up his suitcase and then just left. Days later, I nearly had a heart attack when I saw that the joint bank account was emptied, followed a few days later by divorce papers. It was clear what Kevin wanted and filled with sadness. I signed the papers. The first few weeks of being a single parent were very difficult. Between losing my husband and being forced to try to find a job that would pay well enough to support both myself and Diane. I tried my best and applied to as many jobs as I could, but I wasn't getting a single call back. My spirits were low, but I was in for an even bigger shock when Diane began to feel sick. It started out as just a fever, but it began to get worse as she developed a terrible cough. I took her to the hospital, and I was terrified that after losing my husband, that I would also lose her. She spent weeks in the hospital as she battled whatever it was that she had. However, just as she was beginning to recover, the hospital dropped more bad news on me and informed me that my daughter's treatments were growing quickly and that it was going to cost me a small fortune to pay for her medical bills. I tried to call up Kevin to get him to help us out, but he was less than impressed. Kevin, I really need your help. Diane is very sick and her medical bills are too much for me to handle. Could you please help us out with a little bit of money?
I divorced you for this very reason. My money is all my own, and I would sooner cut my own leg off before giving the two of you any.
I was so desperate and at the end of my ropes that I decided to go and buy a lottery ticket. I knew, of course, that it was silly, as the chances of me winning were astronomically small, but I needed a miracle, and I was willing to try anything. However, that was when my bad fortune ended. That night, the numbers were drawn, and my ticket was the winner of the grand prize. Overnight, I went from having overwhelming debt and no job or money to being a millionaire. With money no longer a concern, I was able to focus on supporting Diane as she recovered. It was such a welcome relief on the day that she left the hospital. When we arrived at home, we began to settle in and make plans to go on a vacation together to celebrate her good health when there was a sudden knock on the door. It was Kevin of all people, and he seemed very agitated.
Oh, thank God that you're home. Listen, I heard about you winning the lottery and I knew that you would help me out. You know I love you. Right? And we have a lovely daughter.
What are you talking about?
I got involved with some really bad people, the Yakuza gang, and now I owe them a lot of money. Please, can you give me enough to pay them off? Afterwards, I swear I will learn to fly right and be a good person. I can change, honey. I swear.
I wasn't falling for it again, though, and I just stared at him. Do you honestly think that I would give you a penny after everything that you've done? Our daughter almost died, and you couldn't be bothered to give her some money for her treatments, and now you expect me to give you money to bail you out of your own problems. I could see in his eyes that he realized that he wasn't getting any money from me, and that drove him crazy with rage. He lunged at me, but I saw it coming and moved aside so that he fell flat on his face. While he was on the ground, I kicked him as hard as I could between the legs, and then dragged him out of the house as he curled up in pain. After that, I didn't see him for many years, although I did hear that the people, the Yakuza that he owed money to, did end up attacking him and hurt him so bad that he was confined to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. I knew that I could have given him the money that he needed, but it would never have been enough. If I had bailed him out, then he would just have gotten back into the situation again, as he had no self-control at all. As for my daughter and I, we are much happier now, and this coming fall my daughter is getting ready to attend university. And I plan to start dating. Who knows, maybe I can still find my Prince Charming. Personally, I don't think I was too selfish when I chose to now help my ex-husband, but it's really not my place to say. What do you think?